Welcome back. We continue our journey through the season of Lent by looking at scripture passages from the lectionary, passages you probably will hear dealt with in your own church week by week. And today is a long and familiar one. I just want to kind of walk through it with you. It's from the 11th chapter of John, and this is the raising of Lazarus, where Jesus is informed that Lazarus is very ill. He is in Jerusalem. Lazarus is in Bethany. Lazarus is a dear friend, the brother of Mary and Martha, and Jesus has been in their home so many times and would again. So word comes, he's very ill. The sisters have called for you. From Jerusalem, where he was, to Bethany is 2 miles. 2 miles. A lot of us walk more than that on the treadmill every morning. You know, it's not far. Jesus waits 4 days. When Jesus finally arrived in Bethany, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Why did that occur? Why didn't he go immediately? The author of the Gospel of John is seeking to proclaim a very specific message. In John's Gospel, Jesus is God. That's the whole incarnation theology. Jesus is God on earth, and John wants to make certain that there is nothing Jesus cannot do. Therefore, healings is one thing, but resurrections are another, to show that he has power over death itself. So, he waits in John's Gospel to go to his friend Lazarus until Lazarus is dead. Lazarus is not only dead, Lazarus has been dead 4 days. We'll deal with that in just a moment, but it's really important to note it wasn't 2, it wasn't 3, it was the 4th day. Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away. Many of the Jews who had come to Mary and Martha to console them said to them, "Jesus is coming now." Martha went to meet him, though Mary stayed at home. And when she met him, Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here when we asked, my brother would still be alive." It's 2 miles. If you had been here, my brother would still be alive. It is an expression of anger. It's also an expression of faith. She speaks with great faith. You are the one person who could have done something. I have absolute unshaken belief about that, but I'm still angry. We let you know. There was plenty of time. You delayed. You didn't come. He died. Had you come when we asked you? It's symbolic, I think, for us as we deal with our own experiences of loss and grief, that it's okay to feel what you feel. You don't have to come through a grief experience in a saintly fashion. We know about the 5 stages of grief and how you have to go through them. Shock, anger, guilt, depression, and finally resolution. And you can't just skip any of those moments. You can't just skip any of those episodes, any of those feelings. You can't bury them away. It's part of the reality of grieving. We see that here with Martha. She is angry because the loss she has suffered is so deep, and she thought it was preventable. Lord, if you had been here, it's okay to feel what you feel. Jesus does not chastise her for her grief. Jesus grieves with her. My brother would still have been alive. And Jesus says, your brother will rise again. Martha said, I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. And then Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever lives and believes in me, though they die, yet shall they live. Here John is saying Jesus has power over everything, including the final enemy of death. Jesus is the source of life. Now, Jesus goes to the tomb. And a little bit further down in the chapter, he says, where have you laid the body? They said, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. All kinds of questions have been asked about why. Was it an experience of grief? Was it an experience of anger? Was it an experience of frustration? One of the Greek readings of the word lends itself more toward frustration and anger than toward sadness. There are those who suggest Jesus wept not out of the grief of losing Lazarus. He's already said he will rise, but rather at the grief of calling him back from heaven to earth. Doing this for the sisters, demonstrating his power over death. That he grieves because he knows what he's taking Lazarus from and putting him back into. Golly, it'd be like a kid who has banana pudding beside the dinner plate, and mom lets you have one spoonful, but then she makes you finish your spinach before you get your dessert. Who wants to taste the pudding and then have to go back to the spinach? Was Jesus weeping because he knew that Lazarus was already in the presence of God, in that eternal place where there is no sickness, there is no sadness, and there are no goodbyes, and he was going to have to call him back from that to the pains and the problems of the mortal journey? Jesus wept. Then Jesus said, "Move the stone." And Martha says to him, "Lord, do not do this. There will be an odor. It is the fourth day." Now, I said I'd get back to that. There will be an odor. It is the fourth day. In Jewish thought in that age, when a person died, his or her spirit lingered where the body was for 3 days. After the third day, the soul migrated to heaven. It was gone. This couldn't happen on the second or third day. Jesus waited to the fourth day. Why? So that there was no longer any question. This person is not in a coma. This person is not someone who can be medically resuscitated. This person is dead. Their body is decomposing. The soul has already migrated to another place. Roll away the stone. And he said, "Lazarus, come forth." Lazarus, whose body was wilting into death. Lazarus, whose soul had already left. Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus came forth. Jesus said, "Untie the bandages and give him dinner." Here, John demonstrates that God, in the person of Jesus, has absolute power, even power, to bring someone back from the grave. If Jesus has the power to bring life to his dead friend Lazarus, how much power does Jesus have to bring life to those of us who are already living real life, full life, authentic life? Lazarus, come forth. And they unbound him, set him free.